Hey everybody, welcome to another video. This one's going to be a weird one. Like I said, I think, well, actually I didn't say anything, but anyways, I think that only like the real diehards, or the people who had to have lived this will get this video. Stuff I'm going to talk about in here is pretty obscure. And like I said, if you grew up in the 80s and if you were a big Dungeons & Dragons person, you probably came across this stuff. Even if you weren't, maybe you did, if you just liked toys in general. But if you're around my age, like, I would say 49 to 51-ish, that age, I think you probably might get this one. For everybody else, you're in for a little bit of a a weird one. So what made me think of this was I can't remember exactly what I was doing. I was looking for something online and I came across just one little image, and it just totally it was like I don't know, it's like one, like in a movie where, like, the guy goes to put his hand on some object, and then all of a sudden it does this really rapid fire, like, image just shooting off in the person's head, like kind of like, effect that they would do with like rapid edits and stuff. That's kind of the in a nutshell, the experience I had. It got me thinking, and I just like, I've got to look this stuff up. I mean, obviously there's people out there that, are pretty obsessed, and they'll keep this stuff alive on the internet, and which is what I'm kind of trying to do to myself. And I was just like, I've got to go down this nostalgic path. I mean, I got to open up this whole flood of memories, and I did. And here we go. So let's go back. I'm gonna say let's go back to 1982 first, and then we'll kind of morph into 83. So, going back to 1982, two things kind of I came across which kind of started this, and I said will eventually lead to where I'm going with this. The first one is probably the movie Sword and the Sorcerer. Now, I don't know if you've seen this movie. I know Mystery Science Theater did a version of it, and and it gets a lot of flack as being, a shitty movie. But you know what? I loved those movies back then. I didn't care how crappy they were. I loved those movies back then. And when I saw that one, I was totally taken aback. I was just like, oh, this is awesome. And it's cheesy as all hell. But and like I said, I don't know if I discussed this. I also saw Conan in '82, which also kind of, I guess, dovetails into this. But I know I was going to see the was it Poltergeist? Yeah, there was Poltergeist, and they had Clash of the Titans. It was a double feature, Poltergeist and Clash of the Titans. This would have been '82, and we went to the Blue Sky Drive-In over in in '82. It wasn't Auburn Hills. Like I said, if you go under on I-75, you go under the Walton Boulevard exit where Oakland University is, you'll see a sign, Auburn Hills, established in 1983. So this is 1982. It was still Pontiac at the time. So it wasn't Auburn Hills yet, but nowadays it's called Auburn Hills. I think it was on Updike. I think was where the actual Blue Sky Drive-In was. And I went there with my sister and my dad in the AMC Eagle. And we were sitting there, and they had like a playground, like swing sets and like slides and stuff up on the grassy part in front of the screen, so that the kids could go get their wiggles out, so they could sit down and actually pay attention to a movie inside the car once the movie started, once the sun went down. Because everybody would start getting there when it's light out, and then everybody just sit there and hang, get food from the concessions, just hang. Kids would play up front until sundown, and then after the sun went down, then they'd start the movies. I don't know if you've ever been to a drive-in. It's just how it was back then. So anyways, we were there, and I was up there playing with some kids, and they said, hey, what movies have you seen? And I'm like going, I wanted to flex, as my son would say. I was like, well, I've seen Conan the Barbarian. And they're like, oh yeah, I saw that too. I'm like, no you didn't. Yeah I did. No I didn't. Yeah you did. And then I said, well, did you see Sword and the Sorcerer? And they're like, yeah, but I haven't seen that yet. And I was mad. I was just like, I don't think they've seen it. I don't believe them. Then when their mom came to come pick them up, I remember I had to call them out. Hey, did your son go see Sword and the Sorcerer and Conan the Barbarian? She's like, oh yeah, we go see all those movies. I'm like, I literally, I think I'm making that face that I did back then, and I was mad. I was like, oh, some kid went up to me. I got to go see the Sword and the Sorcerer. Dad. That's all I could think of. I couldn't even settle down until they started. One guy starts ripping his face off in the bathroom after eating the chicken poltergeist. Right? Then I started like, oh, but up until then I was just fuming, and I wanted to see Sword and the Sorcerer. So I ended up seeing Sword and the Sorcerer. I remember my dad was pretty much okay with it, although he hated that stuff. Like I said, he's like, why do I gotta go see this stuff with you? But I remember my dad was like going, hey, what's going on here? I remember he said when there's this one scene where they open the camera on the one princess or whatever her name is, the black-haired girl, and they open up and these guys are like oiling her body, and they got like her hands right on her butt, and that's like the opening scene of this shot. And I remember my dad's like going like, hey, what's going on here? I just remember that. I still say that to this day when I see something on TV. I said to my son, hey, what's going on here? Anyways, so, sorry, I'm really kind of getting off course here. But anyway, Sword and the Sorcerer. So, I'd seen the movie, blown away with it. And of course, I'll show some images of it. Of course, you know the whole shtick was that three-bladed sword that had the two swords that shot out. It's total bullshit stupidity, but it was so freaking badass in the 80s. Like, oh, it's so badass. He's got a sword with 3 blades, and 2 of them shoot out. And then when he breaks off the other blade, he pulls out a dagger from the hilt of the sword, the handle of the sword. And it's just like, that's so cool. Ninjas are so cool. Sorry. It's the 80s. Anyways, but then here's the thing that kind of started. Then I remember seeing ads on comic books and stuff, and even in magazines for MPC used to put out these model kits, and they had an 2 Empire Strikes Back model kits. I had one of them. I didn't have the other one, and I had the Jabba the Hutt when Jedi came out. I had the MPC model set to that. Anyways, they had a Dungeons and Dragons model set, and again, remember they had the Grenadier miniatures, and I got those, and I was like, oh, I gotta paint these. But you saw these like full color picture in this ad of so cool looking of this like diorama of a dungeon with these miniatures, and it was the same situation. Basically, it was just a vac molded piece of plastic, polystyrene or whatever. And then they would give you sprues of like miniatures, like Dungeons and Dragons miniatures, or the Empire Strikes Back, whatever, that were molded in whatever color, model kit color, and you clipped them off. Although I never knew what a clippers were back then. I would just sit there and just move them until they fell off, and then they usually ended up breaking half the stuff on them, anyways. And then I didn't even know how to file or clip the stuff. I was like, why won't he stand up? Because the sprue mark was right on the bottom of his base, and he won't stand up. So anyways, I saw that ad, and I was like, oh, I so want that. And, trust me, this gets into Sword and the Sorcerer. So, I remember we were at the Lakeside Mall. We were at KB Toy Store. Remember, KB Toy Store used to have a really nice hobby section. And their section at the Lakeside one was kind of to the one row. They had like Smart Kid toys. There was all the microscopes and telescopes, all the Smart Kid toys on one side. On the other side, they had hobbies, model cars, model airplanes, rock tumbler kits, chemistry sets, and then they had the Dungeons and Dragons stuff. They had them kind of like set up in a section. They had the modules, they had the box sets. They had the Grenadier miniatures back there, and then they had like different sets and everything, and they had that set. And I didn't catch it at first because there was no picture of the box on the advertisement. So when I saw the box, I was like, so what's that? And all of a sudden I look at it and I'm like, that's that set from that advertisement. Had to have it. $9.99. Not a lot of money, but still a pretty decent amount of money back then. Dad, I want that set. Here we go again. I remember my sister trying to talk my dad out of everything I wanted. My sister would try to talk my dad out of it. My dad he's like, he'd kind of get caught in the middle of it. And I usually ended up winning. Although with that mask situation, I didn't win, and I still hold it against my sister to this day. But anyways, I got the set. And here, the thing is, the box is like yay big. And here I'm lugging around this box in this KB bag around the mall, because we didn't leave right away. And of course I wanted to leave right. Once I got what I want, I'm out of there, So, anyways, we're walking around, and I remember one of the mistakes that I did was, those leather seats. Watch my video on merry-go-rounds, you'll see, I'll show pictures, and there's actually in the thumbnail pictures of Lakeside Mall, little anchor stores, Sears, Penny's, Hudson's, and they'd have those little brown leather couches, outside waiting area outside the stores, so the husbands and stuff could just go out there and sit and bullshit and smoke cigarettes with other dads while the wives are in there spending all their money. But anyways, they had it down to a science back then. But I was sitting there, and I think my sister wanted to go to the store, and I didn't want to go there. And then my dad's like, well, just stay here, and we'll be back. Because he had to go appease my sister. So anyways, I was sitting there, and I remember I was pulling the set out and looking at the people, and the guy next to me was like, hey, what do you got there? We didn't, no worry about stranger danger back then or anything. Here I am, this is 82, so I'm 9-year-old kid sitting there by himself looking at these this crazy model kit on these brown leather couches at Lakeside Mall outside of an anchor store. No stranger danger. I didn't get abducted. My friend pointed this out. I said, it's so odd how, all of the crazy stuff that I did as a kid, I never got, kidnapped or abducted. And he says, it's because they would only abduct and kidnap the pretty kids. You're not a pretty kid. You were never a pretty kid. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I guess I wasn't a pretty kid. Nobody wanted to abduct me. Damn it! So anyways, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the stuff, and of course I think I lost a couple of the dudes, popped off the thing screws, and they ended up on the floor. And like I said, the malls were packed then, so a lot of people traipsing through there. It's like I couldn't wait to get it home. I wanted to play with it now. But then the thing was, when I looked it up, I saw it's just this big sheet of plastic. I'm like, oh, that's what it is. Oh, so you got to paint the whole thing. You don't just have to paint the miniatures. You got to paint everything. There it left. There it stayed in its box, and it never got out. Well, by the time I got home, and I never opened it, and I was mad. Mad and disappointed, and my dad's like, why don't you ever go get that thing we bought and get out and play with it? I'm like, I got to paint the whole thing. He's like, well, paint it. And I'm like, it's a lot of work. I don't want to do any work. So, there it stood. So, fast forward a year. We'll get to Sword and the Sorcerer. Fast forward a year. Well, actually, first let's go and let me show you this, because I guess I might as well show you the visuals as we go. So here was that ad. Take your imagination to a new level. The Advanced Dungeons & Dragons action scene by MPC. The best models come from the best kits. Just take your imagination beyond the realm of fantasy and create 2 realistic scenes from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Fantasy role-playing game, the Dungeons Invaders and Orc War action scenes from MPC. Just imagine, with each exciting background, you get a whole population of monsters and clerics, thieves, elves, halflings. Oh, they're just totally pushing all my buttons. Doors, magic users. It's not a mage, it's not a wizard, it's not a sorcerer, it's a magic user, and others. And if building only one scene isn't enough for you, you can join the 2 scenes together and really let your imagination roam. Now it's all that... Wait, what? Now isn't all that even better than you would ever imagine. Blah, blah, blah. They're all about the imagining, right? And here's the thing. They got a point. Back then, you were a kid, you had to use your imagination quite often. And I think I developed my hyper sense of imagination from having to imagine so much stuff. Everything didn't have to be, you could actually punch all these guys out, put all this stuff all together, unpainted, all like in gray or white plastic, and they didn't have to be color. It would be nice, but it didn't have to be color. You could have this whole adventure in your head, basically here. And the thing I loved about this was, I already got into Dungeons & Dragons this time. Really, Dungeons & Dragons is hard. And I liked the miniatures, and I really wanted to play with them like toys, but you really couldn't do anything. Something like this was like, well, now I've got like a whole play set area, something to do with these guys. I got a little dungeon. I can really do some imagining. Walking up these little steps here, I thought that was so cool as a kid. Anyways, so here was the box. That's not the best picture. Is this better? That's a different picture. That's a different set. So yeah, that's right. I never got the other one. This is the one I had right here. Was the dungeon set. So it had this cool black dragon. Great art. I mean, just stellar artwork right on the box. Big box, both big full color box. But that was the box there. And like I said, I keep saying it's like this big, with kid hands, it was probably more like this big. It was actually pretty decent size. Because I think I don't know if they have a dimension on it, but I think if you set the thing out, it was probably a little piece of plastic. It was probably, what's my little mat over here say? I'd say it was probably 21 inches by about 15, 16 inches. Pretty decent size. And then, obviously the box would be the size of that piece of plastic, and then all the stuff was in baggies that would be shoved underneath, like the raised areas. But there it was, in all its glory. Like I said, there's the ad. That's that piece of plastic there. Look at that carrion crawler. That was that piece. And like I said, it was just such a cool set. I think, what I think they're talking about? Okay, I get it. I see what they're talking about. So that was the other set. Okay, so over here, you see this? That set is the dungeon set. That set, that's why, that's why I was wondering. I was like, where are all the other, where's the little tent? I like that little tent for some reason. And I didn't see the tent there. That is why. This is, it all makes sense now. This is why I didn't have that, because there's that tent right there. That was the second set. That's what they meant when they said there's two sets. See how complicated that ad was? I thought it was all in one box as a kid. No, that's why. And I didn't realize that literally until now. Over 40 years later, that's why that little tent wasn't in that set, because there's two sets. Like I said, I didn't have this one. I learned my lesson in the first one. I don't know if I want this now that I got it. So the ad was pretty misleading. I know it says there's two scenes, but they don't. Well, I guess it says right here, Orc War and the Dungeons Invaders. Yeah, but you have to read, and it's tiny little print. I can't read. Yeah, look at the little set. Look at that. Look at the little guys there. Look at that. There's a Shrieker. There's a Shrieker in that set. A Carrion Crawler. You got these wizards and stuff. It looks like look at orcs there. Look at that. There's the treasure with the little sliding little snakes, little bones. Oh god, this is so cool. But yeah. So anyways, there was this. Okay. Remember, this is 1982. Let's fast forward to 1983. My dad, for some reason, I don't know, Chatham did him wrong or something, or he was bored of Chatham grocery store. We used to go every Saturday. After cartoons, we'd go to Chatham, and then I'd go down to Kittyland, Rochester Book Center, now playing. So he's all of a sudden, Dad already just discovers it. He's like, hey, there's a grocery store up there in the Hampton Circle called Foodland. Now, if you don't remember this, Hampton is right around the block from my mom's house. In Rochester Hills, Hampton, where I used to work at the Hampton movie theater, there's this little shopping center, and there, I don't know what's in there right now. I know there's Time, like Market and stuff like that in there. But anyways, it used to, I swear it used to go back farther. Like the parking lot was bigger. But again, we were talking about, you're a little kid, and everything's bigger to you as a little kid. But that whole shopping center in there, they had the Hampton was down at the end, but they had a big grocery store, and it was called Food Town. And I don't know if you remember Food Towns, but anyways, this other grocery store, and I remember they had Stargate Defender in the front. Like when you walked in, they had the little machines where you get the little capsule stuff, and then next to that was Stargate Defender. It's like I hear, you know, all the Stargate noises when you walk in there. But anyways, I go in there, and they had a great toy section. Like they had a whole row. Like it was in the same section with the cereal. They had, which made sense. They had a toy section, and they had a lot of good toys in there. And one of the things that they had was they had these play sets. Now I thought when I first came across them, and I'll show you here. When I first came across them, like, are these the Dungeons and Dragons sets? And then I realized, I'm like, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? So what I had seen, what I seen, as a kid would say, were these. There's Dragonriders of Styx. Now, put a pin in Dragonriders of Styx. Okay. Dungeons of Castilian, right? That was one of them. And it's funny, if you read this little excerpt, it says here, it's a company called DFC. It stands for Dimension for Children. Dimension for Children's this toy company. I can't find any information on them online, like on Wikipedia or anything, so I'm assuming they've been defunct for a long time. But DFC produced 5 playsets: Dragonriders of Styx, the Dungeons of Castilian, the Tower of the Night, the Fires of Shandar, the Forest of Doom, and a mini playset that's just called Fantasy Playset. Multi-Toy added 2 playsets, the Demons of Castilian and the Giant Castle playset. The Dungeons of Castilians was pulled from the stores thanks to TSR and was replaced with the Demons of Castilian. Both of the Castilian playsets are very rare. Now, I did have Dragonriders of Styx, this specific playset. I don't believe I got it then at that specific time, but I did end up getting that. I think I got it from, I don't think it was Kittyland. I think it was JK Toys in Lakeside, or in Winchester Mall. Or it could have been Kmart. I don't think I got it at Kmart. So, and there was the playset here. Let's see if they can show the. So you get like a bunch of they're like the plastic army men, right? You get like a bunch of those. You get a bunch of these knights. They were all this blue color. You get these wizards. They're all the same wizard. And then you get these demon guys, and then these other like big. I guess they were hobgoblins. They're called hobgoblins. And then these other little like demon guys. And you'd have this big battle, right? But the thing is, all of this stuff obviously was already, it's molded in color, but it was all painted, like as in like it had some color to it. It wasn't just look like a model kit. And they had the big plastic mat that you put down first, which was the board, and then you'd put all the little stuff in the spots. They still make stuff like that today. I have somewhere an army set that I got my son. It's kind of the same concept. And actually, we did have 2 fantasy sets. I think they're in my mom's basement. Toys R Us put out these fantasy ones that I was like, this totally reminds me of the Dragonriders of Styx when I was a kid, when Toys R Us was still around. And they were like in these tubs, and I bought the 2 tubs. I think we still have them. I don't know. I thought we might have sold them in a garage sale, but I think we still have them in my mom's basement. That was the concept. And the thing was, to me, I'm like, that's what I want. I don't want this model set that I have to work on. I just want to be able to put the stuff together. So the one that they did have, specifically at the Food Town, was Dungeons of Castilian. Now, which kind of makes sense, because they said in 1983 that TSR sued them, essentially, and said, hey, you can't do this, right? They ended up pulling the set. And I know why they pulled the set, because if you look at those snake guys. Those are Nagas. And it's funny. It's like they were like totally Nagas straight from Dungeons, right from the Monster Manual. But they pulled the set, and it would make sense at a place like Food Town, which is, this grocery store. It's like, we got a bunch of these box sets, and they had a stack of them, like even on the top shelf. And they're like, we can't move them, It's like they want us to pull. I'm sure they never even told the grocery stores to pull them off the shelf. I'm sure they told, like, you know, like Toys R Us, you know, KB Toy Store, they had to pull them. But I'm sure they didn't send a communique out to everybody who had these things, because I'm sure they're getting tons of stores. Like I said, grocery stores had great toy sections back then. And anyways, here's the thing. It's funny because you look at the curled up little price tag there that's kind of falling off. Here's the trick. And I only got caught once, and I didn't really get in trouble, but they knew I did it. But of course I played stupid. But I was such a little con artist as a kid. But anyways, I noticed that they, you know, I didn't notice this because I wouldn't have known it existed because it didn't come out yet. I think Great Scott, which was in the old Chatham, was the first one that had scanners. You know, they didn't use barcodes back then. Literally, when you took your groceries to the conveyor belt, you know, or whatever the thing is, to the checkout lane with the, you know, the belt thing, the cashier would literally have to take, like, oh, eggs, 79 cents, and have to type them in. And it would print it out on a receipt, a tape of receipt, and it was like it was a cash register, you know, which is like a glorified adding machine. And so you get your receipt. It was just like an adding machine. That's all it was. And it had like a drawer, change drawer, whatever. So there was nothing to scan. There was none of that. So if something came across and it had a price tag on it, it's like, how much is this? Oh, right. Well, I was like, I remember the price tag on this said like $8.99 or something, right? So I was, I went, huh. I might have told this story before. I did this with the Stompers too. That's when I got caught with the Stompers. But anyways, I took my fingernail, which I don't know if I had them back then because I still bit them back then. But I took my fingernail and I peeled off a price tag from something else that was like $2.99, right? And then I put the price tag over the price tag on this specific set. And took it up there. My dad's like, it's $3. Yeah, sure, throw it up there. Anyways, and the lady's like, oh, she gets a set. How much is it? Where's the price tag? Oh, it's $2.99. Okay, boop. Got it for $2.99. So anyways, I'm sure Food Town's not going to watch this video and come after me now all these years later. But anyways, like I said, I did this with a Stomper set. I tried to get like a $20 big Stomper set at this Food Town for like, I think I thought it said $9.99, but I think I ended up putting a sticker on that said 99 cents. And the girl at the counter's like, hey, this isn't 99 cents. And she's like, this is more money than that. Do you still want it? Because we have to do a price check on this. And my dad just looks at me. You know, the lady looks at me. Everybody knew what happened, but nobody said anything. So just Mexican standoff with the eyes. And I was just like, and then my dad was pissed at me. I don't think my dad ever brought it up. I don't think he ever got in the car and he just forgot about it. He just didn't want to he didn't say anything. Yeah, so and I don't even think we went back to Food Town much after that. But anyways, so I got this Dungeons of Castellian, and I loved this thing. I was like, this is what I wanted. Here's the thing. It's like Dungeons and Dragons is cool, but you had to read. And you had to play the game. You had to find other kids to play it, right? I want to play this in my room, or on the living room floor, on the carpet, by myself, and have my own adventures in my own brain. I don't want to have to share with any kids. I just want to sit there and play myself, right? And you can't play Dungeons & Dragons to do that. Trust me, I've tried a myriad of different ways to play Dungeons & Dragons where I can just play by myself and play and make up my own stuff in my head, right? So this is what I really wanted, you know. This is essentially, I just wanted this, you know. And sure, I think I even tried to paint some of these guys at one point. It didn't work. You can't paint this like rubbery, waxy plastic with Tester's enamel paint with no primer. It didn't stick. It would just flake right off. But it's funny. The end of all this, most of this stuff, right? You know how all this stuff, I got rid of all this stuff? You'd think, oh, you probably sold it in a garage sale or parents threw it out. No. I lit it all on fire. Pretty much. I was in my room burnt. At least I was going through a tough time as a kid. And I remember taking a candle and lighting like the blue nights on fire and watching the as the dripping of the hot plastic that's on fire. It would make this noise, and it would just little fireballs. And like, and I had like this metal cooking tin or whatever they put them in, and I had like a bunch of guys, and I was like melting a guy and like letting his guts, you know, his melted body drip all over the other ones. They're like, ah, like fireballs! All these little fireballs would go on there. My dad's like, you burning something in there? I just got a candle going, Dad. Oh, you sure? Smells like you're burning plastic in there. No, I'm not burning plastic, as I'm burning plastic. And just the first time I caught one of those fireballs, I think on my foot or on my leg as a kid, woo! You learned it quick. How hot molten plastic is as it sears through your leg there. But anyways, I had it all over the carpet. That's funny. Like I said, when my parents finally decided to sell the house, and my mom had to come after my dad moved out, and my mom came in and had to clean up, you know, the entire house and get ready to sell. She was just like, she was so pissed. She's yelling and screaming at me. What have you been doing in this house since I've been out of here? Like, I lit the carpet on fire in the living room. My bedroom had all kinds of odd shit. I mean, you would think it was like a, you know, like a serial killer scene there. Just all kinds of insanity. Like, well, you know what, Mom? This is what happens when you get divorced. This is what happens to your kids' brains. So, you know, you kind of ask to hurt it yourself. So anyways, so back to the story. Sorry, I like to tell my stories, but sometimes I get a little off course. So apparently they switched this to this, Demons of Castilian. And the thing is, I totally remember this box, and I think I even was going to get it and didn't get it because I realized, wait a minute, I already got all these guys. So it was the same set, essentially. And the thing is, here's the other thing I thought was cool. They used to do this with Star Wars. They did it with lots of stuff, and I'm sure you did it too. Is I kept the boxes as I keep the boxes today and a lot of things, but they had all these giant cardboard pieces on the back. It was all black and white, and like all this line art, right? And me being the artist as I was, what are you going to do? I want to color that. So oddly enough, I wouldn't take the time to paint the miniatures in color, but I would color that entire box, the background, everything. I'd use the sides of the crayon and do some shading here and there and blend some colors, and I would color all of that. So it's like you got like a color poster thing along with it to have more fun. There was another one there. But so the Tower of Night, I remember, I never had this one. I remember this one coming out, wanted it, never got it. There it is there. A lot of the same miniatures. It's just a different set. The Forest of Doom, I wanted this because I wanted the trees, and if I remember correctly, yes. When I did get that, I'm like, oh, the trees are just cardboard cutouts. Okay. So it's all of the same guys again, but just cardboard cutouts of the trees. I thought the trees were like their own miniatures as a kid. Even when I saw the picture here, I was like, those look like miniatures. No, they're cardboard cutouts. I was very disappointed. Fires of Shandar, I remember seeing it. I didn't have it. I never saw this giant castle. I mean, I saw it. It was in one of the Christmas catalogs, but I never saw it in the store. That would have been insane to get. That's crazy. But I remember seeing this little fantasy playset version of the other one. So here's the thing. So then I started seeing these on the shelf, and specifically Kittyland, and to some extent Kmart and JK Toys. But I remember going to Kittyland and seeing these smaller sets. I think they said there's only one, but I thought there was more than that. And they would basically have the tree people again in this tiny little set, but it'd be on a peg. Okay, so yeah, they had this one too. So anyway, I started seeing these, and I'm like, oh, I've got all those guys. I don't really want any of those guys because I had this set. I did have the other set, which I'll get to that in a minute. Which they don't show pictured here because I don't believe it was the same company. It was another company that was doing the exact same thing. We'll get to that shortly here. But what tipped me off, though, was next to these, and again, the Dragonriders of Styx, right, is they had them next to these guys. Now, these are the Dragonriders of Styx. These were toys, and I'll show you. Like this one was one of my favorites. I don't know if you guys remember these. So they were cheap, like $1.97 at Toys R Us, right? And they were cheap. I remember They were less than $2 a piece when Star Wars figures and GI Joes were $2.99. They're 3 3/4 figures. They were a little bit more than 5 points of articulation because the knees would bend on these. I liked anything that had the knees bend. That was always a cool feature. But they came out with these, and then a whole set of these, as you can see, then a whole bunch of these. And they had some creatures. Some were really stupid. They were like cars with. They would basically look like, I don't even know what to describe them. These dueling devils. I had this horse, and I got a story behind that one. I think I had the dragon, and I don't see the good guy horse. I had a good guy horse too. So anyways, this guy was cool because he came with this guy was my favorite of all of them. I mean, obviously he's a big red bat guy, demon guy, and he had these cool wings. And I was like, are these Dungeons and Dragons figures? It's like, no, these are Dragonriders of Styx. Close enough for me, right? They had this, and they had this guy, this ogre. I just thought he was so cool. He looked like one of the miniatures, obviously. But I loved that like cool helmet with the pointy ears, and like he had like fangs and stuff. This guy, and the swivel swords. Oh, I love the swivel swords. Oddly enough, I was in my Uncle Bob's baby blue. Oh no, that was the Thunderbird. After he got rid of the Thunderbird, he got an Escort, a Ford Escort, back when Escorts were popular. I think right around this time, 83, 84. And I get in the back seat of his Escort, and on the floor, look down, and there's a swivel. There's literally a sword, a swivel sword like this on the back on the floor, and I go, Bob, what's this? And he's like, oh, don't touch that, it's sharp. I know, but what is it? He's like, it's just it's like a big knife, big dagger knife thing. I got it from my dad's house. He has a whole bunch of this stuff in the basement. And I'm like, but it's like a fantasy sword. He's like, yeah, it's like a fantasy weird dagger sword thing. He's collecting all kinds of this stuff. And he's like, I want it. This was right about the time, me with the little knife. I wanted that thing. It's weird. I didn't dream that. That actually happened. That was just weird. This guy too, this dragon guy, I always thought he was pretty cool. They all kind of had the same card, and then they just had these simple things. And some of like he came with a shield. Oh, yeah, actually, I think he came with an axe or something too. They'd all come with like two weapons, like a shield and a weapon thing. Oh, here's those Nagas, by the way. I want $10 for 2 of those. What happened to them? Oh, man, that's odd. I was just talking to my friend about those Lone Ranger figures. There's those Nagas. I think that's just funny. But anyways, so they had these, and like I said, there was this. Where is he? So I ended up. See, there it is. Dragonriders of Styx. There's the playset there. Here's the guys. So there's that guy. It's funny thing was, okay, so remember that guy. Put a pin in this guy too. He's got like this weird kind of like bald head, and this kind of like shirtless, not in good shape, kind of barrel-chested, weird-looking guy. Think of, if you've seen Sword and the Sorcerer, think of the one guy. I can't remember the actor. He was in like Star Crash. He's a actor, like a typecast. He always plays a bad guy of some sort. He looks just like the guy in that movie, and I was wondering, did they model him after that guy in that movie? But so I thought this was so cool too. I loved this horse. What was it called? It was just Riding Creature. Was all it was called. I thought it had a name. But the thing was, what got me mad though was I already had the guy, right? So it's like I don't want the guy again. But obviously it's just like army build with these guys, like they're a bunch of demons, just like those big play sets. It's like, I know I don't want the guy again, and he doesn't come with a swivel cord, it comes with the like scimitar thing, but I want the horse, and they didn't sell the horse separately. But the other thing was, it's like, well, wait a minute, even if I get this guy, because I thought to myself, same thing, maybe this guy will be like the rider, and then I'll have the foot soldier guy, and like, but he doesn't have wings. I want the bat wings. It's just like, come on. So even back then, this stuff would get on my nerves. So this was like a knockoff company. These are like cheap toys, like really cheap toys. So I remember seeing that, and then I ended I never got the Black Dragon. I wanted this thing. I don't think it had 2 heads, did it? Oh, maybe it did. Yeah, it did have 2 heads. So they came with some extra guys and stuff. But these things were like cheap, like not even on clearance. Like you could, I think those are like $3.99 or something for the creatures, and then the guys are like $1.50, $1.97. They're really cheap. And so you could buy a lot of them. And you could army build. You could do, you could basically do this type of whole thing and have a whole bunch of them. Yeah. So I thought they were pretty cool. So we're coming up on 40 minutes here. So let me flip this over into Sword and the Sorcerer. Now, if you don't know what Sword and the Sorcerer is, it was a movie. It came out in 1982, as I discussed in the beginning of this video. It was a movie. Starring Lee Horsley, Kathleen Beller, Simon McCorkindale, this guy, right, and here's the bad guy, Richard Lynch. Horror. I'm in a horror movie. He's this guy, I think he's passed away now, but he was playing the bad guy and everything. But I loved Richard Lynch. I hated him because he's always the bad guy. Like, I don't like this guy, but at the same time, I always liked the guy, but he was so Long Island, or Jersey, or whatever. He had that, hey, this guy, he kind of had almost like a Christopher Walken way of talking, but maybe not as fucked up in the head. But anyways, horror. You always say horror. And he just, I don't know, he was one of those type of actors. But yeah, I think he has passed away. Let me just see real quick. Yep, died at 72 in 2012. He plays Cromwell, the main bad guy. But I loved this movie as a kid. And I still love, I love this movie today. I don't care how stupid it is and how cheap it is and how cheesy it is. I still love this movie. So, let's get back to that. So anyways, I'm just going to pull up some scenes here if you remember. So there's Richard Lynch, George Lynch, Lynch Mob, and then there's Lynch Mob right there. There's the brunette girl. She was really cute too. There she is there. I think that might have been The Scene too. The Scene. Lee Horsley. I think even Frank from Murphy Brown, he's in it. But anyways, the Susha, the main or the evil demon guy that's in the beginning of the movie, there's a three-bladed sword. Remember this artwork right here too. Obviously there was the poster. Love that poster. That was on the DVD. I think the Blu-ray has that on it too as well. I don't like these ones as much. That was another movie poster. I like this one. That's my all-time favorite version of that. There he is. But the one evil sorcerer guy, Richard Mall from Night Court. And this was pre-Night Court. Remember, Night Court didn't start till 1984. So Richard Mall, pre-Night Court. I think wasn't Richard Mall also the main bad guy in Metal Storm, The Legends of Jared Zinn, that 3D movie that was kind of like Space Hunter, Legends in the Forbidden Zone. And a lot of those type of movies back then, it was some name of the something of the something something. There's Lynch there. It says that, look, I'm telling you, Susha, you can't be killing all my people. You killed all my red dragons. Or I can't remember how that story goes. Or he kills all the red dragons or something like that. Blah, blah, blah. But, here she is again. The other thing that was weird, too, is she looked very much like that girl. If you know what I mean. The girl in this movie, she has that look. That, like, Margot Kidder / that look. You know what I'm saying? This girl has that look. And I swear there's like 5 actresses in Hollywood back at the time, and all were the same girl. Or they weren't the same girl, but they all looked exactly like each other. There's this girl. Here she is again. They're kind of like this weird Mia Sara / Winona Ryder / the girl from Lost Boys / Margot Kidder / just keep going. They all just kind of look like each other. Also kind of looked like she actually kind of looks like the daughter on Too Close for Comfort, the brunette, the one brunette, Jackie. I think Jackie was the brunette. I like Jackie. I had a thing for Jackie as a kid. Anyways, she kind of looks like her too, a little bit. But anyways, of course, next year, later, Krull comes out. We'll get into Krull later. Um, in another video. But here's the thing about that time period, though, is there's that sword, the three-bladed sword. I mean, we're just so inundated with fantasy, and most of it, almost all of it, is two things: Dungeons and Dragons, Conan the Barbarian. I mean, those pretty much are the two things that kind of cemented fantasy in the early, especially in the early '80s, with these movies and all these, and then all the really bad B movies that would come out, like all the Ator movies, which were all the Deathstalker movies, all those, or I think Ator and Deathstalker too. The same actor, Miles O'Keefe. How much O'Keefe's in this movie? Miles O'Keefe. That was a Mr. Science Theater joke. Anyways, but yeah, so they had. Again, remember the movie now. So, here I am. We go to, I want to say it was not grocery store this time, right? Just a drugstore. Think Perry Drugs. Another good toy aisle. Perry Drugs had the model Roton and Attack Track and Talon Fighter MPC. I think they're MPC, or maybe they're AMT. I think they were still MPC, or maybe they're Revell kits from the Masters Universe. I mean, Perry had a decent toy aisle. That's where I started buying the Secret Wars figures. So, sorry, I tell you, my brain, too much information in my head. So I'm at the Perry, right? And I'm going through the toy aisle looking for something. And if you remember what rack toys are, I don't know if you know what rack toys are. Plaid Stallions is a great site. I'd say go there sometime. But so rack toys like Fleetwood was a company. There was another one too. And they would basically get a license, like the A-Team, right? They would get a license. And they'd already have like all this stuff already made. Like a lot of flashlights. They loved to give the kids flashlights back then. Little flashlights. Little fake guns, fake handcuffs, walkie-talkies, like the walkie-talkies where they attach the tube together so you could talk to each other. A lot of dart guns, a lot of these like zip flyer things and stuff. It's called label slapping. They'd buy the A-Team license and they just label slap all these toys and call them the A-Team accessory pack stuff, right? And they'd be very cheap, like $1, $1.50, $2. And they'd be on a rack. That's why I call them rack toys. And they'd be on a rack at a drugstore. So when the kids, want something cheap, the parents would just go buy them. So a lot of those Batmobiles and Bat boats that I had. So anyways, they had the rack with the rack toys on it, right? And I would casually look at them because once in a while I'd find a gem there. I come across these. I'm like, Sword and Sorcerer. So we're coming full circle now. So, and yeah, as you can see, clearly, remember I said look at the art, right? He's got the three-bladed sword. That right there, there's the Sorcerer, the guy, the bad guy. Remember the artwork from the cover, right? There it is, right there. Just making sure. So, I'm like, okay. And then they had this. They had this 2-horse pack. And these guys, they could take them off the horse, put them on. I mean, they're just molded plastic, but they were somewhat painted. Well, they're vaguely painted. But he had the three-bladed sword, and I was just assumed that was Cromwell as a kid. Oh, it's the Cromwell and Talon. Talon was the main bad guy, Lee Horsley's character. It's like, oh, it's Talon and Cromwell. And then I swear that this guy, this red guy, was the same guy as that other figure, who also looks like the actor in Sword and the Sorcerer who plays the bald guy that kind of like, he's the one that he cuts out the tongue of this girl here. He cuts her tongue out or whatever. Pretty crazy scene in there. Just want to see if I can find the actor real quick so I can remember what that guy is. So you know what I'm talking about. Let's see, where's the cast? Cast. It's probably not the best place to look at the cast. Robert Tesser. So let's look it up on IMDb real quick. Let's go here. Sword and the Sorcerer. IMDb. 1982 film. Let's go to cast. Where's this lunatic? There he is. Robert Tessier. I guess that was the guy's name. You ever seen this guy? I'm sure he's passed away too. Yeah, it looks like he died in 1990. This guy. Oh, let's just put. Just want to see if I can find him in the movie, so you know what I'm talking about. Oh, he looks just like that character. I don't see a picture of him. But you'll know, if you saw him, you'd know him. He's very distinct looking. There he is. There he is in the movie. He's got like he's always bald. He's always got like this hairy, burly kind of chested guy. You know, he's got just a pointy, big beaky nose on him. You know, he's a terrible actor too, right? He basically just plays the same kind of character. So anyways, that guy looks just like this miniature, who also looks just like the miniature in the other one. Where was it? As you can see, there he is there. See what I mean? It's hard to see in these pictures, but if you notice him, he especially looks like I'm there. So I just assumed that, and there's another swivel sword, I just assumed that was the first time I saw swivel swords, before I had that strange encounter with my Uncle Bob in the back of his, that doesn't sound right. Anyways, yeah. So, anyways, so these come out. Dad, can I get these? Whatever. So I grabbed I think I had every one of these. I think I even actually went back and got more of them just so I could double up on stuff. And the thing is here, it's like you could get the guy, I would, you know, because I just want more of them. But you got everybody in this like stupid castle piece, which was lame. But and then you could buy them separately. And I remember literally sitting on the couch at the house there and playing with these guys and playing Sword and the Sorcerer. And then I'd have them all interact with my Dragonriders or Styx. So, like I said, all of this stuff was like just cheap knockoff, really obscure toys from the 80s. But I loved them. I mean, I loved them. I mean, they were so much fun. Just the adventures and the imagination and just, I mean, all the fun that I had with this stuff. And like I said, that was... So I started to kind of, you know, Dungeons and Dragons kind of kept pushing it away because it was too hard, you know, and I was too young. You know, I really didn't get it. And, you know, like I said, I couldn't read, which was always a big obstacle. I know I keep saying that, but I mean, just letting you know that there was a huge obstacle to doing a lot of things. But yeah, you know, this stuff's cool. I mean, it's funny, I'm looking at its prices are just astronomical to find this stuff vintage, and it's like, I just wish somebody would just, like, 3D print all this stuff. Get a copy of these things and 3D print them. I don't even care if they're good, because those suck to begin with anyways. And just 3D print them, that'd be so neat. But yeah, so that was my, like I said, it took a long way to get to that, the comeback with that movie, but, so I want to see what this is real quick. Oh, we'll get to that later. Yeah, there's all, and more, yeah. But, yeah, all these sets, you know, and of course that thing kind of set the whole thing in motion. But, that's my experience, all that stuff. So tell me, do you guys even know what any of this stuff is? I'm sure you probably know obviously know what Dungeons and Dragons is, and you probably know what the Sword and the Sorcerer movie is, maybe. But do you remember any of this stuff? Did you have any of this stuff? You know, what did you have? You know, I'd like to know. Let's talk shop. You know, what did you have? You know, what are your experiences? Do you have any funny stories, or do you have any, you know, anecdotal things you can tell, you know, involving any of these things? You know, maybe when you bought it, or how you acquired it, or anything like that. Let me know. I keep saying this a lot in videos, and some people come and they tell me their personal stories, but I've noticed that I don't get a lot of them, so I'm just wondering, man, did I just have a lot of junk? Or was I just into so much crap as a kid, more so than the average kid? Because, like I said, this is one of the reasons why a lot of my friends used to get mad at me, is because you're into too much stuff, I can't keep up with you. 1 minute it's one thing, and then it's another thing. I can't, my parents won't buy me all this stuff. But I think I'm kind of probably running into the same situation here online. It's like, I get all my KISS people talking about KISS stuff, and then suddenly I switch gears and start talking about NPC Dungeons and Dragons action scene sets, right? I'm sure my KISS fans are like, God, this guy, Jesus, he's all over the place. It's just how I am. That's why I'm making these videos. Like I said, all of this stuff, I'm just trying to get as much of it onto video and try to recall as much as, before the memory goes. And I'm curious to see, what other people, what everybody else's experience. Sorry. Oh, I totally remember that. Oh, God, I remember that. What was that? I saw something, though, that, damn it. Okay. Oh, the Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. So this is what spurred this off of. Apparently, they have the Super 7 figures of these. They're like, the reactions and stuff. I just saw a couple of them were on sale for like half or 68% off, and I said, if they ever go on crazy clearance, I might buy them. And some of them are, not all of them, some of them are on crazy clearance. I'm still thinking about getting them, but probably not. And that's what I think. I went to look them up, and then something with Dragonriders of the Styx popped up, or maybe it was that or something. And then I was just like, oh, like I said, it was just like touching the magic stone. Suddenly, just a cacophony of images and stories and incidents and all kinds of just things just went off in my brain when I saw that. So, oh, sorry, you can't see what I'm looking at because I already changed the screen up. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyways, yeah, I've almost gone an hour. So, tell me your stories. Let me know. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. You know what? Hey, if there's something you want to know about that I haven't touched yet, or maybe I've mentioned it but I didn't go into detail, of something you really want to see, besides endless KISS videos, tell me what it is, and maybe you might trigger a video, something I'm thinking of, and we'll get into it, So, that said, I don't know what's gonna. I'm sure something will come up on the next video. I'll probably take a completely other route and go off in another tangent, and then alienate the people who now are like, I was the KISS video is what I came here for. I could sort of buy the NPC, action scene, Dungeons and Dragons kits, and it's like, oh no, boom, suddenly switch gears again, you're on something I completely never heard of. So I'm sure that situation's going to happen. But I will talk to you guys in the future on the next one, and we'll see where it goes from there. Alright, bye-bye.